And I
Live.
actually aired that to anybody but us.
So
So
we aired. Oh, so we aired that to us. That was brilliant.
but
I'm
we
so
could
glad we got to see why we're here. It was a good reminder
in
that
case you
nobody
didn't
else
know.
saw.
Yeah. I was like, oh, you probably pressed go live. That's the first time I've had a fancy intro.
Now, well,
But we could
do
do
you
our
want
own
to?
intro.
You don't. Well, I just thought you were so good in the intro.
Okay,
It's
we can show it. And so we'll explain why we are here with Dr. Dain Heer for the third of the 3 series of You Are Not Alone. Let's try it again. What if now is the time to end the stigma around discussing what so many of us struggle with? Stress, anxiety, depression, addiction, PTSD, and more. Too often we hear people say they felt alone before discovering the tools of change at Access Consciousness. That is why we created this series of lives to reinforce the message that you are not alone, and in fact, you are a gift to this world.
There you go. That was much more official. I like it. That was great.
Oh, so welcome everyone, and welcome Dr. Dain. Thank you for being with us today.
Truly a pleasure. And hi everybody out there. Nice to see you all.
Yeah. And today is actually, it's September 10th. And on years past, this is around the world what we call World Suicide Awareness and Prevention Day.
Yes.
And yeah.
No, after you.
Other years you've done different things around this day and month. And then also October is Mental Health Awareness Month. So at Access, and you were a big part of this, and Gary Douglas, both of you, the co-creators of Access, about looking at, okay, with all that's going on in the world, how do we get access tools, access bars out in the world more so people know it's an option? And with last year, with Corona hitting the world and people feeling really more alone than ever, we sort of made this whole campaign around You Are Not Alone. And so I'm really honored to have you on here today to talk about, you've been at a place in your life where you planned a date to take your own life. Yes. And so you have been there and felt alone. And now you've really used a lot of different tools with Access Consciousness to change everything. And so thank you for having this conversation. And where would you like to begin?
Well, for me, I'm really grateful to be here having the conversation on a uniquely personal level and also a dynamic worldwide level, in that I'm grateful to be alive, and choosing not to take my life 20 plus years ago was one of the greatest gifts ever. And there's, at the place I was, I had, for the first time in my life, truly given up hope, and I'm a seeker. It's like I'm somebody who always knew something else was possible, and who always had the sense that, okay, tomorrow I will be able to create something different than today. And I got to a certain point in my life after doing workshop after workshop, seminar after seminar, where I was like, wow, this may not actually happen. And it was that day that I said, hey, universe, you got 6 months. Either my life changes or I'm out of here. And I planned a date, and I knew how I was going to do it. And I thought I was going to get out. And I wasn't doing that to make anybody else wrong. I was doing it to get out of the suffering and the lack of happiness that I had for the better part of 3 years. And it was interesting. A week later, I saw an ad for Access, and it said, Access, all of life comes to me with ease and joy and glory. And had this girl's phone number. Her name was Shannon. And I threw the paper away. I was so angry. I'm like, what do you know about ease, joy, and glory? My life is pain, suffering, and glory. And the paper comes out once a week in Santa Barbara, where I was living at the time. And the only thing my eyes focused on the following week in that paper was this tiny little classified ad. Access, all of life comes to me with ease and joy and glory. And I was so angry and frustrated. But I'd learned long before that if you love it or hate it, there's something there for you. And so I called and I and I asked, "Hey, what are you going to do for me?" And she said, "Well, a good place to start might be with this thing called the bars. It's these 32 points on the head, and just with really light touch, um, it tends to help things." And I was like, "Okay, so what's the result?" She said, "Well, at the worst, you'll feel like you had a good massage. At the best, your whole life will change, or whole life can change." And in the back of my head, I was like, my whole life better change, or I'm killing myself. What do I have to lose? So I had her come over to my chiropractic office. And I remember laying down on that table that I hated, looking up at a ceiling that I hated, in a room that I hated, in a space that I hated. And she puts her hands on my head. And there was this energy that came through that was so beautiful. And I just reveled in it. And I was like, wow, I didn't know it could be this way. I'd given up on life feeling this way. And after about 15 minutes, the energy transformed into these giggles. And I just was like, hee, hee, hee. And I was giggling like a little kid for the next hour and 15 minutes. And I got up, and it was the first sense of peace I'd had in almost 3 years. And I had a sense of gratitude for being alive. And I thought to myself, wow, if it feels like this to be alive, I'm in. And that was the greatest choice I could have made at that point in my life, is actually to live. Because then I started actually exploring more access consciousness after that. I resisted it for a while, of course, to prove that I could do it on my own and I don't need any help, which is what got me in part of what got me in the place I was in the first place. But then I started having this gratitude for each moment of my life, and the fact that I could breathe it in and be here and experience it. And I started getting tools to start changing the things that weren't working. And within a few weeks, I just started, it was like the space of everything I always hoped could exist started existing. It went from hope to actualization. It went from dreaming to living it. And it's just gotten greater over the last 20 plus years. And so I say to people out there, number one, you truly are not alone. And you're not the only one of your kind. You're not the only weirdo in the world. There's a bunch of us weirdos. And see, we're getting our technical stuff figured out. We managed to get the intro out to people. Now we got our background. Look how pretty we are. Oh my goodness. And what I want to let people know is the people that are at this place of, and you don't have to be at the place of suicidal thoughts or desires. There's a lot of people that are stressed out in the world now, but I consider that an invitation to find out what is actually true for us and what is possible for us beyond normal and beyond what everybody else thinks is so necessary to live as. And if I've learned anything in the last 2+ decades working with hundreds of thousands of people, is that we all have choices that we don't recognize, that are far greater than whatever we're experiencing or whatever we're choosing, that actually are there, that can make life worth living. And, today is not just me like saying, hey, it's okay, live. But I do want to start out with, hey, it's okay, live. This thing that you call living is actually a rare and precious gift, especially when you have the tools to navigate this insane world we live in. And please know, I'm not going to sit here and tell you the world is not totally fucked up, because the world is fucked up. Yeah. But I am going to say you're not. It's like if you live, if you live in carrot soup for 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 or 70 years, somebody pulls you out, they plop you out and you look like a carrot because you're all orange, you smell like a carrot, you taste like a carrot, you're still not a carrot. Well, the particular carrot soup we've been swimming in is an insane world that does not value our difference, that does not seek to explore the gift of us and what is unique and different about us, but tries to put us in a box with everybody else who is, it tries to put us in a box that is not of our making, but also tries to lump you in with everybody else who's stressed about everything, and you're supposed to play a role in that, rather than recognizing that the greatest gift we are to the world is our awareness that there's something different possible, our ability to choose it, and our invitation to others like us to know they can do the same.
Well, and with that, with all of the beautiful things you said, one of the things you did talk about your first access bar session and what that changed. And I just wanted to let people know one of the things that is going on over this month and next, there are people that give that body process, access bars, that are practitioners or facilitators. There's over 300,000 practitioners, around 10,000 facilitators, and many of them are offering free sessions this month and next month. So if you go to this website, you can either search for a facilitator, and you can then filter by country or where you live. So you can just see if someone's near you. And then you can also see if someone's planned an event. But a lot of people, if you reach out to them and contact them, are there available to talk to. I mean, like, there are people all over the world. So I just wanted to mention that, because you've done a lot of interviews, and it's that not including access bars is impossible. You need to include it because it's such a part of how you changed.
Yes.
And went from like not having any hope to having some.
Literally. And I walked into that session depressed and suicidal, and I came out of it with a gratitude for being alive. And what I found is you can't talk people into knowing that's possible. That's not a talkable deal. What you can do is give them the experience of it, and we've done studies and found that access consciousness bars diminishes anxiety, stress, and depression an average of 87% with one friggin' session. And that's not to say that what my experience is going to be everybody's experience, but to know that it can is really hopeful. And then the other thing that we have is a ton of tools to use in the trenches of life when you really need a lifeline, when you desire things to change, when they're yuck and stuck and you want to change them to something lighter and greater, but also when there's something you'd like to create. It's like we have tools for creation so that you can actually create your life. You can create business, you can create money, you can create relationships, you can create bodies in the way that you would like to. And I say again, your uniqueness is a gift. There are lots of people in this world right now that are looking at all the stress and everything, but they have no sense of wow, I don't want to be here, I don't want to live my life. They're thriving on the drama and pushing it in everybody else's face. But there are lots of people, the people that are at this place of wondering whether they want to be here anymore, are the individuals who have the ability to literally change the world by how they show up. And what if this experience that you've been going through, what if whatever it is, including the insanity of this world, whatever it is that's gotten you to this place, if you're there, what if that was what was required to break that thing in your world that made you believe that you could just do the same thing over and over and get a different result? What if it's your awareness that there has to be something way different possible? Consider this as one of the possibilities for opening that door, getting there, and try it out. Why not?
So how do you start to use that awareness to your advantage? Because I know right now calls, there's all sorts of different statistics, but calls to suicide helplines are at higher than they've ever been. I was talking with a friend who is a psychologist saying, there's been many studies where people can put up with something or some stress for a certain amount of time. And then with something like Corona is a good example that keeps going on past where people thought they could hold on, or past where they expected. That's where a lot of people break.
Yeah.
Can you say more how you do go use your awareness and being a sensitive being on this planet to your advantage, and not getting sucked into that pattern that is here of, oh my gosh, it's where you were. It's not, I don't see how it's going to get better.
Well, part of it is it starts with asking questions rather than coming to conclusion. And one of the great questions you can ask is, what's right about me that I'm not getting? And what's right about this that I'm not getting? Because our point of view creates our reality. So if we have the point of view that this is wrong or I'm wrong, that's all you can see. It's wrong, I'm wrong. It's wrong, I'm wrong. It's wrong, I'm wrong. But if you ask what's right about me I'm not getting, or what's right about this I'm not getting, a chink in the armor appears and you can see a different possibility. And what we require at this point is a different possibility. You know, it's we don't need to change the whole thing. All we need is some space in the contraction, because that when we get that, we then have hope again, and we have awareness that things can change. So asking a question gives you the ability to open the door to create change. What's right about me I'm not getting, what's right about this I'm not getting. Another great question is, who does all this shit belong to? Because we're like psychic radio receivers. We pick up stuff from people all the time. Like, have you ever been in a relationship and knew that you're like, must call my boyfriend, I must call my girlfriend? Well, yeah, we've all done that. Why? Because you can pick up energetically what they're going through. Well, if you can acknowledge it, one of the awarenesses we had in Access Consciousness a long time ago is that 98% of your thoughts, your feelings, your emotions, your judgments, and you're stuck and feeling hopeless are actually not yours. You're picking them up from people around you. Well, what does it do to the, if you could consider the, I guess the vibration or the frequency on the planet, what has occurred in the last 2 years? It has gone from, okay, a lot of crazy, but a lot of not crazy, to seemingly predominantly crazy, or at least very intense. Well, as that occurs, we tap into it more. And we're now walking around with a lot of heaviness, paranoia for some people, stress at the very least for most people. And we're picking it up from everybody else. So you want to ask, who does this belong to? If it lightens up at all, it's not yours. All you got to do is, even if it belongs to 8 billion other people, if it lightens up at all, it's not yours. All you got to do is return to sender with consciousness attached. Yep, you can go to that link. There's a whole playlist there. There's a free app. I mean, it's free. You know, it's like we've got so many tools that we have, or conversations we've had around this, because this is one of the things that when people use it starts changing their entire reality, because it's the one way, in addition to bars, that you can empty out the monkey mind. Because if you could get rid of 98% of the crap that's in your head today, what would you be left with? You'd only have to deal with the 2% that's actually yours. And that is an amazing gift. So we've also, though, that was another question. Who does this belong to? But it's also a tool. Then another question is, what else is possible beyond this reality that I've never considered? Because you may or may not know it right now. And I want to share this tool with you first. What's true for you always makes you lighter. A lie always makes you heavier. Okay. So if you hear something that's true, you kind of go, ah, or you relax, or your heart opens up, or you get a smile, or you get a movement, you know, you kind of get a little giddy where you're like, hey, yeah, that's what's true. Okay. So you may not recognize it right now, but I'd like you to see if it makes you feel lighter when I say it. You are a gift to the world. You and your awareness of possibilities and realities and way things can be beyond this reality are actually the gift that will allow them to show up if you don't kill the gift. But what we live in a world where people are making what is going on around them that is intense and dramatic really significant, and they're going, oh, this is this, and oh, and the people who are more aware are like, well, I'm going to fight against this, as though that's changing it, but it doesn't. Anything you fight against perpetrates the thing you're fighting against, because of the entire construct. If this thing is living down here in the cesspool, in order for you to fight against it, you have to come down in the cesspool. What is the cesspool? It's where all the poop and the toilet paper and the bits of corn and tomato live, or AKA most people's choice for where they choose to live at this point. Okay, maybe not most people, but a lot of people now. You can see them now, whereas before they were sort of hidden. Now they're everywhere, especially on the internet. Yay! Cesspool trolls. Yay! And here we are, these people who would like a different possibility, people who'd like people to be happy, people who would like to bring lightness to the world. And we're like, I have no place, I have no value, because nobody else seems to get it. What you don't realize is nobody has to align and agree with your reality for it to exist. You just have to not kill it in order for it to exist. And part of the conversation here is to recognize that your difference is your beauty. Your difference is one of the greatest things about you. And your difference is something that I celebrate and Access facilitators celebrate. And a lot of the people that come to Access and use these tools celebrate, because they've learned to celebrate theirs. They're way happy to celebrate yours. So if you're thinking of leaving the planet because you feel alone, because you're the weirdo in the group, you know what? The original meaning of weird was of spirit, fate, or destiny. And I absolutely get it, because I was exactly there 21 years ago, and you are not alone. And part of the reason I am so grateful to be here in front of you right now is because when I started 21 years ago, we didn't even have a website. You couldn't find Access anywhere unless you happened to meet somebody who happened to do it, or be crazy enough to see a tiny little classified ad in the independent paper in Santa Barbara. And part of what I wanted to do was, I'm like, the world needs to know this exists. I don't care whether they choose it or not, that's their choice, but I want them to know it exists. And I want the square pegs and the round holes, the misfits, the dreamers, to know that you have value. You existing here is not a mistake. You existing here is not a wrongness. In fact, it's one of the greatest rightnesses the world has ever seen. And we got you, babe. And we're every bit as weird as you are. So just know you got a home, okay? You got some place where people explore weird, where people know they are weird, where people have the tools to embrace their weirdness and weird it up, but not from a place of resisting this reality or fighting against it, from a place of going, hey, you know what? Of spirit, fate, or destiny, baby. And what that means is, rather than fighting against this reality and getting down in the cesspool, you stand on the side or you hover above and go, wow, a cesspool. I wonder why all the people are in the cesspool. Huh. Animals are up here with me just hanging out. Babies are up here with me just hanging out. Some people are up here with me just hanging out. Why is everybody else finding such value in the poop and in the used toilet paper? And I don't get it. Okay, fine.
Well,
and you realize you can't get it. You don't understand it. It's not your reality.
Yeah. And when you say that, it's also so judgeable to choose to be here when so much of the rest of the world is there in the cesspool.
Yeah. And somebody asked that, when I feel lonely, what do I do?
Mm-hmm.
And what do? You go, what do I have to ask? And I love that he said that. What do I have to, he, she, someone? Okay. Russia. I was going to make a joke about Russia, but then, this is probably not the time to make jokes, because it's a very serious conversation. But in actuality, anything you're willing to bring lightness to can change, because what's true for you makes you lighter. But that person asked, when I feel alone, what do I have to ask? And I love that they said, what do I have to ask? Because they're getting in the mode of, let me ask a question to create a change. First question, when you feel alone, who does this belong to? Is this actually mine? Or am I aware of the entire world feeling alone, especially since the pandemic started, when you had to stay home and you could only interact online, if that? How much are you aware of the world, but also how much are you trying to heal the world, my beautiful friends? And with this conversation here, I've been writing repeated, intense waves of panic and grief for the last 3 days. I've been running Who Does This Belong To nearly constantly. It's not surprising when you think of what anniversary is this Saturday in the US. I know, right? Uh-huh. So here's the other thing is, this is an interesting thing, because we're talking about this and approaching this from the awareness that you truly are not alone as one of the seekers of the world. And at the same time, you are not alone, meaning there's a bunch of people out there going through a bunch of stuff that you pick up on, because you're not alone. So what we've been doing is we've been using this interconnection that we have, but we've basically been using it against us. Because we've been buying that all the stuff that we perceive belongs to us, no matter how intense it is or how many people have it, believing that the thing that is most true is the thing that's most intense. But in actuality, the thing that's most true for us is the thing that is the lightest, which is totally counterintuitive. But think about it for a moment. What's it like when you go out in nature? After you decompress, don't you notice you feel light? You have a sense of space and a sense of gratitude, a sense of connection with everything and everyone. Well, let's use that on our behalf. Let's use the awareness of these different spaces and different lightness, but let's also use the awareness that we are connected to ask that question, who does this belong to? So we're not the effect of what we're aware of. And so the other part of this is there was another part that I forgot. My ADHD took over. Darn. It was so telling in this particular. Oh, here's the other part is let's look at this for a moment. Okay. What's the difference between I perceive sadness and I am sad? Everybody gets that, right? When you say I am sad, now you've owned it. I perceive sadness as it's outside of me. I am not this, which instantly connotes an ability to not have to be that, but also what it gives you is an ability to change it. So with this idea of who does this belong to and your dynamic awareness of people in their bodies. And for those of us in the United States, 9/11 is tomorrow. And there are a lot of people that are going into post-traumatic stress disorder over that because it was one of the biggest events they had experienced in their lifetimes here in the US, people that were not in the military. This was their biggest event. So how much are you picking up on the PTSD that people in the United States are experiencing, and maybe people in other parts of the world that feel connected to the US? And it was a pivotal point for a lot of people. So let's do this. Everything you're doing to buy that as yours, everything you're doing to buy everything you perceive as yours in the world right now, will you destroy and uncreate that and return it to sender with consciousness attached? Right and wrong, good and bad, pod and poc, all nine shorts, boys and beyonds. If you don't know what that is, go to theclearingstatement.com. It takes 20 minutes to explain it, but it's based on the idea that you can go back to the point of creation of a limited point of view. And if you access the actual point of creation with your choice to make a different choice and change it, you can unlock it. POC and pod is the short form for that. It's like the room you're in, the walls look solid, but science tells us they're 99.99999% space. What if the limitations in your life are exactly the same way? This is a way of accessing it. So, and I agree, let's have each other's backs. And that's really what a big part of this conversation is about from my point of view, is let's have each other's backs. Let's be there in a way that we uniquely can. Because the other thing we don't realize is part of the other reason why calls to suicide hotlines are increasing so dynamically and people are experiencing this so much more is because of the sense of isolation that has been created in the world. And, and so one of our greatest gifts, one of the ways that we can always pull ourselves out of our own crap is being there for somebody else. Have you ever noticed, like, when you have a friend who really needs you, even though you're like, oh my God, I'm terrible, as soon as they're like, can you please help me? And you put your crap at the door and you walk into that room and you're there for them. Well, that's because that's how we're wired. That's who we actually are. We're creatures of contribution to one another. Let us use that also. Look around for who can I contribute to that would actually receive it. Who could use my help today that would allow me to know that I'm actually a gift and would allow them to know they're actually a gift? And you want to look for the people that could actually receive it and contribute to them and see what changes in their world and see how it changes yours. This is another aspect of we are not alone.
Well, I would love, could you say more about that, about having people in your life like that and asking for people like that to show up versus I know a lot of us do have, whatever you want to call it, toxic friendships or relationships or people that aren't that energy of you contribute to each other. And so what does one do when you are looking for that in your life and don't feel like you have that?
Well, that is a function of the world we live in right now. And because people have not been brought up to nurture the caring that they have for another. And they've also not been brought up to value caring for themselves and nurture that. And so we live in a world that seems to be almost devoid of caring. If you look out at standard presentation of things in general. And yet, what I find is that there are many, many, many beautiful, phenomenal people that have a level of caring, if you'll let it in, that is greater than anything you could have imagined. And so it's this very interesting context in which we're living, in which caring seems to be a very not valued product. And yet, if you display just a little of it to someone, it's amazing how often their whole world opens up and they recognize, wow, I am not alone. There is somebody else who functions on this wavelength. And to recognize that you're surrounded by so many people who don't value what you do, in this case, caring, or in this case, contributing to somebody, can seem like it's really daunting. But what I found is, even if you can connect on Zoom or connect via phone or connect via text with somebody who actually does have caring, it changes everything. So even, and here's the other thing is, we often, in our caring for others, we will look and go, oh, well, I'm only want to be caring if it's going to be received. We don't realize that our caring for another, expressing our caring for another, letting them know, asking them, hey, are you okay? Hey, you're not alone. I'm here for you. Let's have a coffee and a conversation. Let me ask you some questions. Let me run your bars if you know how to do that. Or I found this weird friggin' Facebook Live the other day and I got lighter after, and I don't know why, but here's the link. Or, whatever it is. Like, notice, even as I start going down that road of talking about it, notice things get lighter. That's because that's us. Whenever we do what's true for us, whenever we function from what is true for us, we get lighter. Let's use that. And the other idea that we're told in this world is, if you go to contribute to somebody and they don't receive it, then you're supposed to be upset and they don't like you and it means something about you. In actuality, us being the contribution with no point of view of whether it's received changes us for the greater. It acknowledges what is true about us. And what I see is, there are a lot of people out there in the world that are suffering right now that have a level of greatness that they're not choosing to access because everybody else around them is choosing to be so fucking mediocre. Mm-hmm. And so a level of greatness could be something like they actually care for other people really dynamically, but they're shutting it down. They have an ability to speak with people. They're shutting it down. They have an ability to create. They're shutting it down. They have a level of happiness, but they're shutting it down. They have weird ways of looking at things that will solve problems for people, but they're shutting it down because they believe nobody's receiving it. And what I'm going to say is, what we will be emboldened by and made greater by is accessing the greatness that we actually are, that we've been pretending doesn't exist, so we can fit in with a world of mediocre idiots. Now, when I say mediocre idiots, you might think I'm judging, and I may be, but from my point of view, it doesn't have a charge. It's an acknowledgement. And what if you looked at it right now and just went, wow, the world is pretty much full of mediocre idiots. But are those the only people in the world? Or is that just what people have been conditioned to try to go down to, the lowest common denominator? And if we try to go down to the lowest common denominator, we don't want to be here anymore. Because the lowest common denominator has very little happiness. It has very little joy. It has a lot of drama. It has a lot of pain. It has a lot of suffering. It has a lot of separation. It has a lot of judgment. It has a lot of wrongness. It has a lot of rightness. It has a lot of fight against, and it has living in the cesspool as its primary reality. Is that really where you want to function? And so you ask, well, how do I get out of it? Well, Access has 8,000 tools in addition to bars. That's a great start. We have thousands of videos available online for free. Books, courses, free bar sessions during September and October. So please do not say, oh, none of this works for me. Oh, I can't access it. When you're ready, you will access it. But let's also be kind enough to ourselves to stop giving ourselves excuses for not taking forward steps. Had I not called the girl and who put the ad in the paper, I probably wouldn't be here. But my life was valuable enough to me, even though it wasn't valuable to the people that I thought it should be valuable to. It was valuable enough to me where I was like, I desire something different. I didn't know that was going to create that difference. I had no clue. It wasn't until after the fact that I can acknowledge what a difference it created. But you're the same way. Follow those things that, based on the glimmer of lightness, the little feather touch across your cheek about, ooh, this could be cool. Follow those things. Those are the things that will lead you to the things that will create more lightness in your life. I feel like I've gone off on a bit of a rant, but there's so many aspects to this. And we are here right now with the chance and the capacity to choose something different. Now's the time, kids. And you know what? Even more than that, now is the space. And the space is now for a different reality if we choose.
And I just want to acknowledge you're not going off on a tangent. And there are so many wonderful, there's a lot of great questions and things in the comments. I don't know if we're going to get to all of them. But one of the things I wanted to ask you more about when you were speaking about the difference we are and the mediocre versus the greatness and the people that feel like they're suffering. One of the ways you've talked about that recently that really, at least for me, went in a different way. And from now is the space, is that so many of us that the mediocre is such a surface level way of existing, which is the most common way to exist here. And for those of us that are different and weird and have access to this greatness, if things are just surface, we feel like we're depressed, going crazy, alone. Can you talk a bit about what that going beneath the surface and all our capacity to do that, and what a gift it is to someone, rather than just being like, hey, are you okay? And that's that question and not be present with it. And then there's a way to go deeper.
Yeah. And this, it was interesting because I was sent questions for an interview for this publication. And I've been asked on this subject for a decade now or more. And I would try to answer with the 3 points that somebody could actually use to try to create a change in somebody's world. And when I got these questions, I was like, I am done. I am done, because what's actually required is not 3 points where you can go from depressed to happy using 3 points without having to change anything, And also how do you ask somebody, are you okay? And my first thing was, number one, have you ever gone to hug somebody that was like, I love you, and they kiss you on both cheeks and pat you on the back and can't wait to withdraw as soon as possible? That's somebody who's not the energy of I love you. That's somebody who's like, I don't really like anybody, and I'm intimidated by getting close. That's not I love you. That's I wish you were further away than you are right now, but I'm going to say I love you because it's appropriate. Same thing that I notice people do sometimes with, are you okay? And I realized that for the person that is experiencing this intense reality right now, the greatest gift that we can give is to lower our walls and barriers and not do it from the surface. These people are suffering from the idea, they're suffering from the fact that nobody will meet them beneath the surface where their being is living. Everybody's doing talking head and image. Most of the world is trying to get a positive alignment and agreement and positive judgment so you can get followers. So you try to you learn to make yourself like other people would judge you appropriately for being, which kills those of us that are different and can't do it. Some people seem to thrive on it. I don't understand how, but we're not wired that way. The people that get to this place in their life are not wired that way. They can do it for a while. And the greatest gift we can give is dropping beneath the surface and the surface conversation. But even more importantly than that, beneath the surface energy to a depth of our being that acknowledges their being, that says, hey, I am here for you energetically, whether you say those words or not, but you be the energy of, hi, are you okay? What can I be for you? Hey, you know what? Can we just have a quick talk? Seems like things may be going on, and I just want you to know I'm here to help. And you can just babble at me. I'm not going to try to solve anything. I'm just here to listen. I'm here to be here for you. And so what's really required right now is to have a deeper level of us with us, a deeper level of intimacy with ourselves, a deeper level of honoring, a deeper level of trust, a deeper level of vulnerability, a deeper level of gratitude, a deeper level of allowance, which is the space beyond judgment, of us and for others. And so there's two sides to this. There's when you have somebody who's going through this and is having a massive amount of stress or anxiety or depression or suicidal thoughts, and then there's you living with it. Both of those start to become alleviated with a deeper level of connection with us. Because if you look at it, so many of the people that are contemplating ending their lives right now, or are in this, I hope there aren't that many people there. And if you are, please know you're not wrong and you're not alone, as we've said. But people in this realm with these mental health difficulties, if we want to call it that, it's because so dynamically their being is not being acknowledged. And to the extent that we can start to acknowledge our own, to the extent that we can start to acknowledge the being of another by being willing to be vulnerable and go beneath the surface, we change lives, we change realities, and we change futures. And we can be this for ourselves and each other.
And there's a lot of questions around that. I mean, people like, I don't know how to be around people who have been victims. Another woman who was actually a survivor of 9/11 and feels guilty for being one that lived. This is a mother saying, my 13-year-old daughter is struggling with how the world operates. She sees things very differently and takes her frustrations out with negative feelings. How do we navigate around her very strong energy and try to help her?
Well, number one, you got to acknowledge that she sees things differently. So part of what you want to do is start asking her questions about how she sees things. Because, see, there's the awareness one has when they're different, like your daughter is. But then because nobody is asking us to explore the space of that awareness, which gives us space to acknowledge we're aware and we're aware of something, the only option then is to try to twist it into something that makes sense in this reality. And oftentimes what you twist it into is it gets twisted into, she's weird, she's angry, she doesn't like people, she's a witch, she's like all of these different things that get twisted into because nobody gives us the space to know that it's okay to have the space of a different awareness and a different perspective of the world. She's like a multi-sided dodecahedron trying to fit into a square hole. Not just a square peg in a round hole. She's a multi-sided peg that doesn't fit into any hole. And yet, if you recognize the gift and ask to be shown the gift of her awareness, ask to be shown the gift of her difference, and then ask, what questions can I ask her to get her to see this as a gift? And see, in Access Consciousness, we use this clearing statement a lot. We also use bars. And the parents where their kids do access have so much of an easier time sailing through school and teenagehood and being different and everything. And they sort of have a sense of, hey, I'm okay no matter what. All these other people are kind of crazy, but okay, and it's a totally different space that they learn to function from. So acknowledging her as a being willing to go beneath the surface, and from this moment forward, be willing to ask her about her day Ask her about what's true for her. Ask her about what she likes. Ask her when somebody comes home and she's got an upset, say, what happened? Okay, what is this from your perspective? And what do you know? And if she says something that gets heavy, that's a conclusion. And go, hey, that maybe you're knowing, but knowing always makes you feel lighter. So what is it you know beyond this reality? What is it you know beyond this current reality that we're looking at? And what is it you know is possible? And what are you trying to bring to people? And what are you trying to say to people that they're not hearing? And let her know that you can't say anything to anybody that they're not willing to hear. And their way of rejecting it will be judging you, calling you a weirdo, calling you a witch, bullying you, or whatever else. But also let her know that the bully bullies because they see the person they're bullying is greater than them. And it's something they've 99% of the time learned at home. So lots of things for a general question. And that's just the start. This is something that can be handled more in a private session or in a class. And we have facilitators around the world doing both of those. So please, if it is of interest to you, please check it out. And you could, if you're somewhere, you get a free bar session. That could be extremely helpful. And, but let's also look at this for a moment. What is it you would have needed to hear when you were 13 that nobody ever said to you? And what if you treated her the way you should have been treated, not the way you were treated? Because what we do as parents is we tend to do to our kids the thing we hated that our parents did to us. So if you ever hear your mother coming out of your mouth and it's not really working, you want to just stop, go puck and pot all that shit. Now, what can I be with her? And once again, what would it be like to treat her the way I should have been treated, not the way I was treated?
Thank you for that. One of the things you had said earlier, is being intimate with ourselves and acknowledging our being so that we can be there with that, in that example, like your daughter and asking her questions. And then Lotus said in here, I always acknowledge the beings that are in my family, but they don't acknowledge mine. And then I come away feeling depressed and heavy.
Yes. Here's what you want to do. And by the way, you want to do this with every single person in your life. Anybody you are going to interact with that day, but especially the people that are close to you. All of the projections, expectations, separations, judgments, and rejections you have of them. In other words, all the stuff you're expecting of them and all the projections, expectations, separations, judgments, and rejections they have of you, will you destroy and uncreate it, please? Right and wrong, good and bad, pod and pock, all nine shorts, boys and beyonds. That's the way the clearing statement works. Okay. So in this case, look at it for a moment. Expectation creates disappointment. So if you are like, I will acknowledge them and then they will acknowledge me, and yet here you are, you're like, I mean, you're a bizarrely weird creature, aren't you, in comparison to them? Remember the original meaning of weird, of spirit, fate, or destiny? And let's face it, we're all weirdos. Everybody watching this thing is a weirdo, okay? And people see us that way because we don't get the way this friggin' reality works. We never have. We can't live our lives just for money. We don't know how to judge people, even though we think we're judgmental. And we try to fit in, even though we don't think we know how to fit in. And so here you are, and there's probably some expectation that if you be a certain way with them, then they'll be a certain way with you. But if you're willing to let go of that expectation and that projection, then it takes you out of the place where you need to judge and reject you when they don't match your projection and expectation. This we should be doing with everybody in our lives, especially everybody who's close to us. So once again, all the projections, expectations, separations, judgments, and rejections you have of them and they have of you, will you destroy and uncreate it, please? Right and wrong, good and bad, pod and pock, all nine shorts, boys and beyonds. Yay, everybody's getting lighter.
And with something like that with family, it's this ironic thing where we should feel like they are the ones that we are closest with. And it almost makes us feel more alone when we have that expectation that we should be close and don't. And I want to post this comment Rachel wrote about that. I love how you say, I am not alone. every molecule in the universe is my friend, Dain. It's so beyond any surface. It invites to look beneath into the depths and breadths of possibilities and into wondering. If I had no assumptions here, if I'd be willing to suspend belief of whatever I have thought before, or as you have shown us to ask, if I know not this, what else is possible? Being present and open and vulnerable and raw and real is such a breath of freshness.
That is so beautiful. I love that. Exactly that. And she reminded me of one of my favorite questions. If I know not this, what else is possible? And or if I know not this, what else is possible that I've never considered? Because we assume that something is a certain way, and then we live our lives from the projection and expectation that is unmet. And so that idea of, and what you brought up around family is so true, because we're told that family are those who are supposed to be the closest to us. Family will always be there for you. And yet, if you've ever known a family, like my family, that when somebody died, went into a fight for all of the money and all of the stuff, you realize that, you know how they say blood is thicker than water? Well, in actuality, money is thicker than blood. And you realize that most families function from that perspective. There are probably 1 in 10,000 that do not judge each other, that do not make the humanoid wrong. By the way, you guys are the humanoids. Just so you know, what's a humanoid? The seekers, the ones who are the sensitive individuals of the world that desire to create a greater world for everybody, who nobody sees. They tend to be made wrong, and they never feel like they can fit in because they don't know how to do reality the right way. They don't know how to judge the right way. They don't really care about their image, even though they know they're supposed to, because it's valuable to everybody else. They want to hug people, not fight people. They want to empower people, not disempower and own and control them. And they tend to think they're judgmental of others, but the only person they ever judge is actually themselves. It's to the point now where I just call humanoids a different species. You have the humans that are in judgment of everyone and everything else. Those are also the ones, by the way, that really, really, really believe in Corona and that it's going to kill everybody, even though it kills as few people as the flu. But that's a story for another time. If I'm pushing your buttons, that's okay too. Feel free to hate me. I don't care. Or feel free to love me. I don't care about that any more than you hating me. But I'm presenting this information, hopefully to give some of you some freedom. So we have the humans who do normal reality. And the other thing about humans is they tend to judge everyone and everything else, and they just know they're right and everybody else is wrong. What you see dominating the world right now with their intensity and their drama is basically a human reality. That is where same place, same thing, same place, same thing. This is the way we've always done it. And okay, fine. And like, you know, when I'm saying this, I'm not saying humans are bad and humanoids are good. I'm not at all. What I'm trying to do is get you some awareness so that you don't make yourself the effect, and recognize that your difference is not a wrongness. You're just a different species. You're just a fucking alien. That's all. And an awesome alien, if you would acknowledge it. And also you have different points of view, which is kind of cool. And here's the other thing is a lot of us have people in our lives that judge us. And yet we think we're judgmental of them, and we think we're judgmental people. But let me give you a piece of information. Somebody who is truly judgmental never thinks to themselves, oh my God, I'm so judgmental. They would never have that thought in a billion years. They just know they're right and they have the right judgment, and whatever they're judging is the right point of view, and anybody who doesn't agree with them is wrong. So how many of you have looked over your life and thought how judgmental you are because you were aware of other people's judgments of themselves, thinking it was yours? Who does that belong to? And then decided you were a bad, wrong person for judging, which a truly judgmental person never does. They never think they're bad and wrong for anything they choose. They know that everybody else outside of them is bad and wrong. How much have you, the humanoid, been trying to fit into a human reality that actually is not yours? Everything that is times a godzillion. Will you destroy and uncreate it, please? And claim and own the humanoid weirdo you actually are, and that you don't really know how to judge. It's something you had to learn, and you're not very good at it. Right and wrong, good and bad, pod and pock, call 9, shirts, boys, and beyonds. So here's another piece of this, is that what that gives you is a totally different awareness of what is possible that other people are not willing to have. An awareness that you will be made wrong for a lot of the time by the people who aren't willing to have the different awareness. They will say you're a witch. They will say you're a warlock. They will say you're whatever it is. They'll say you're in a cult. They'll say you're crazy. You're an alien, whatever disparaging remark they want to say, so that they can make their reality right and yours wrong. My question is, if you know that a kinder, greater, less judgmental, more inclusive, less locked down, less stupidly fucking insane controlled reality is available, and they don't, who's actually more aware? And why is it that the person that knows about the greatest possibilities is somehow seen by this reality as woo-woo and crazy, and the idiot who is consuming the planet and abusing people is seen as normal and appropriate? Which is why I say, how about it's time we give up trying to be normal and appropriate? Yes. How about if it's time we be us? And how about if you also realize this conversation is not about hating other people or making them wrong? No, that's what other people would do about you. It's what's been done to you your whole life, which is why you don't want to do it. Well, guess what, kids? You're never going to do that. You're a lover. You're not a hater. You're a lover. You're not a fighter. You're a caregiver and a healer. You're not a destroyer. So this conversation is not they're wrong, let's separate, we're right, let's all get together and be right. No, let's get together and create a different friggin' world where there is no right and wrong, where everyone is included and no one is judged, and where the strongest, loudest voices are not the voices of hate and dissent and judgment and wrongness. Let's actually put on our big boy and big girl panties and move forth and create a different world by our choices. Now is the space. The space is now for something totally different called space.
Thank you. And with that, I would like to just remind everyone that part of that space, a great step to having that, is access bars. And I just want to put up one of this woman's story from earlier. From Lori, I didn't think anything could change my severe PTSD and major depressive disorder. Would have taken my own life, but I'd often wish to be dead. I had stopped laughing and life was misery. The anxiety was the hardest part, and I would jump 10 feet when I heard a sound that was unplanned. I come from extreme abuse, the kind where 5 therapists would just kept saying, wow. Access bars has changed so much for me. Even if I have a day that's not great, I know more is possible.
Oh,
I know. So I really, I know. So there, and every session is different, and we can't say it will do this, but that if you can find someone, if you go to our website, accessconsciousness.com, you can click from there or go to /you are not alone and click find a facilitator or practitioner. And then you can search where you are, country, state, and see if there's someone near you that you can reach out. You can email them through our website. Find people that are holding free events. We call them access bars, free clinics over the next couple of months too. So I just would love to invite everyone to that. And then Dain, you also, when we were looking at this year, around this time of year, and you desired to do this Facebook Live, you also are offering this Sunday a free ESB session. And this is free for anyone. Again, if you go to this website, you can register and we send you a Zoom link. So it's not a Facebook Live, it's on Zoom on a webinar. And can you say a little bit about, because partly you were like, I love ESB because I don't need words to change anything.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Right after right after choosing to live after bars, I met Gary Douglas, the founder of Access, and I was a struggling chiropractor who felt like I couldn't do any technique right. I felt like I wasn't doing anything for my patients. And he comes into my office and said, the first 2 levels of what you do don't work. You need to go to the third. And I said, look, I don't know how to do that. I just started studying that. He said, look, ask my body what it wants, follow the energy, you will know what to do. And there was an energy that became present that I have no ability to describe, but similar to bars, after 45 minutes, after working on Gary for 45 minutes, there was such a transformation in him, in me, and in the space of the room. My whole world was different after. So fast forward to 20 plus years later, where I facilitate a class. So that energy I called ESB, energetic synthesis of being, because it was a way of giving people access to all the parts of their being that they had given up this lifetime or in others, if you believe in that weird shit, and which I do. And I've shown people how to use this to access their own energetic capacities. But for me, it is when I do this in a group session like this, what I'm going to be accessing is what does not allow you to know that the space is now, that now is the space for being. And I'm doing this as my gift to you. I'm doing this as my, part of it is paying forward this phenomenal gift that Access Consciousness has been, and recognizing that there may actually be actualizable change that I can contribute to you all, and that we can contribute to each other through the gift of this session. All you do is sit there. You can keep your eyes open or closed, or you can lie down. You may have a sense of the world starting to twist on its axis, or nothing at all. Who knows? But the end result tends to be a different reality. It's like I said at the very beginning, that you can't talk somebody into a different reality. You can inspire them, maybe you can invite them. But what this is about is a unique gift that I can gift you to have more space to navigate the world as you. And I can't really put more words to it than that. You might do better putting words to it than I do, but that's my gift. It's Sunday. You have to register. It's not going to be on a Facebook Live. As Emily said, it's going to be on a Zoom webinar. You must register, because I'm only doing this for people that are registered and interested. And we will have translation.
Many languages translated, over like 20. The link, if you guys have registered, I saw someone said, I haven't got the link yet. We send it out closer to the date, so it'll probably be sent tomorrow. So don't worry, you will get the link if you have registered. And also for this live itself, if you're listening to translation or you know someone afterwards who is looking for it, I'm going to put in the comments right now the link where, when our amazing translators upload what they are just recording right now, you'll be able to find the links here in this box folder. And we put that also, if you're finding this on YouTube, or you go to the Access Consciousness YouTube, we put that link in the description too, so that you can re-listen to translations and people can find them. Dain, thank you so much for this conversation and who you be and your contribution.
Thank you. Thank you, Miss Emily. You have been a stalwart force for getting You Are Not Alone into the world. And I thank you, because you have had to herd kittens like crazy, and you do it so brilliantly. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank all of you for all of your questions and comments. And truly, if you're looking for more, go to Dain's website, drdainheer.com. You can download a free chapter of the Being You book, the Body Whispering book. There's a whole section of free stuff, your Tour of Consciousness, which is hundreds of videos. So if there's something that you're still curious about, there is so much more. With Access Consciousness, there's always so much more. That's one of the greatest gifts. So please explore and reach out. And you're not alone.
Boom.
Boom. Thank you, Dain. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. See you Sunday.